All right, I want to welcome everybody into the Fifth Dimension podcast. In this solo episode, I want to talk about the myth of Eros. Now, for those who don't know, Eros is the Greek mythological figure, really of love, passionate love, poetry, eroticism. And I want to talk about this myth for the reasons that it's so valuable in today's world. We're really experiencing the coming of a new age. The old world, the old illusions, these old paradigms are really starting to fall and break down. The stories that we have been telling ourselves about ourselves for ages are really crashing around us. And I think returning to the myth of Eros and looking at the teachings of Eros can allow us to hold a greater perspective on how we approach our day to day from a space of love, from a space of compassion as the chaos picks up around us, right? I'm going to get a little bit into the myth, get a little bit into what Eros itself means in just a few minutes here. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And if you're a fan of the show, be sure to subscribe, whatever platform you may be on, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I appreciate you guys being here. Leaving us a rating, 5 stars, or a thumbs up on YouTube does help more people find the show and the algorithm. So I appreciate you guys doing that. If you like poetry, you can buy my poetry books, Marshal, Love Against Tyranny. I got a new poetry book coming out soon that I just decided recently to call The Final Judgment. Expected to be on bookshelves within the next month or two. Of course, I will make an announcement when we do that, and I think I'm going to hold a little giveaway for those who are interested and want to hear the poem. I'm going to do a little giveaway for the book once we launch. So be sure to keep tuning in and follow my Substack, follow my social medias. All of those will have the giveaway information. And of course, Pete, you'll be updated when that book does come out. I really appreciate all the support. I do all of this for the pursuit of my own passions and interests, really. There's no financial gain for me to actually podcast or do poetry or do Substack, tarot readings, any of that. So if you want to leave a donation, the link to do so is in the episode show notes below. And if you want to get a tarot reading, that's also in the episode show notes below. Do it by donation, whether we hop on a Zoom call or I do a full written report that's a few pages long with the cards and the information based on what it is that you're looking for guidance on. And special thank you to our official sponsor, Tranquil Desires, here in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Thank you to Patty for supporting the show in the way that she does and really helping us hit the ground running right now. So if you happen to be in South Dakota, head on over to Chamberlain, South Dakota, and check out Tranquil Desires and say that Evan from the Fifth Dimension sent you. So let's look at this word Eros, right? Eros itself, if we look at the old Greek translation, it actually translates to love. Eros means love. Now, love is such a nuanced, complex word. I want you to take a minute and think about your own definition that you have about love. Like, what does that mean to you? What does it mean in its purest, unconditional form? And really sit with yourself. Feel that within you, within your heart, right? Oftentimes we can't encapsulate a feeling that is so beyond rational mind that we can't always logically put a definition to it. So I want you to feel that within you. Purest, most heart-centered form of love that you can find within yourself, right? Mark Gaffney would translate Eros, his sort of modern definition of it, which I find very interesting. I don't agree with Mark Gaffney on everything. And I don't, everybody will have their own opinions, but I really like his definition of Eros in his book that is pertaining to Eros. It's really profound in the way that he talks about this concept, and he calls Eros radical aliveness that animates and drives our reality. That's what he would call Eros as. Now, I'm going to say that again and really listen to these words because there's a few key words that he uses that I want to point out here. The radical aliveness that animates and drives our reality. So really what he's saying Eros is the animating life force. To anima, live, alive It is the part of ourselves that is purely alive spiritually. It's the part of ourselves that has meaning and purpose and drive and desire and is fueled and sees the beauty and the aesthetic wonders that this world has to offer. All right, that's a radical claim because if we translate Eros, it comes back to love. So is love the radical aliveness that animates and drives our reality? I want you to sit with that and think about it because it's a really profound idea. Is it love that is fueling us, giving us meaning, giving us purpose, allowing us to see beauty, allowing us to connect with people on a deeper level, allowing us to explore within ourselves spiritually, emotionally, physically? Is it love that is sensationary pleasure? Is it love that is the driving life force behind all that we do and all that we seek? I would argue that it is. At the end of the day, we can go past the desires of the mind and our uh, material programming for success, status, and the survival trap of our culture beyond just our baseline needs, as Maslow would put them. What is it that we want most? What is it that we want most? We want connection. That is what fuels our desires. That is what it fuels our seeking in relationships, in status. Why do we want a good job and be able to provide for our family and go through life in a comfortable way? Right? It allows us to optimize our relationships and our connections and provide for one another, right? So there's a real beauty to that. And I want to read about the myth of Eros, because I think his story, if we can all put ourselves within Eros's shoes within his story, and something to point out here, when we're looking at gods and deities, really what these are, it's similar to the tarot, right? Where the major arcana represents different archetypal points within ourselves, archetypal expressions of characteristics that live within us. The story of these deities are meant to represent, in my opinion, they're meant to represent the inner hero's journey that we take within ourselves, right? So when we're reading about Eros, in particular, his love story between Eros and Psyche, there is a profound revelation that we can find about ourselves and our own way of showing up for love and connection and harmony. When we can put ourselves in Eros' shoes and recognize those same callings and desires that we have within us, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about desire later in the podcast because we hear a lot about in particularly Buddhist scriptures and meditation and spiritual circles, the need to eliminate desire. And I feel that's actually very off point. We're not meant to eliminate desire. If anything, we're meant to sit within it, recognize it, see what is consciously and unconsciously fueled, and then use our desire to actually create a life that is meaningful and purposeful. Because we're not meant to go through life in endless suffering. We're all going to have hardship, and this is a time where, as I mentioned at the very beginning, where a lot of our systems are breaking down, a lot of our culture, we're seeing through the facade. We're starting to see who's behind the curtain, if you will. As these things break down, we're going to be thrown into chaos. We're going to be thrown into uncomfortable scenarios, situations. Our relationships are going to be tested. As the darkness is revealed, so is the light within us. And anything that is not in alignment with that light, anything we've built a false foundation on, is going to come crashing down at this time. And it's been happening for me in profound ways. 2024 for me has been the year of karmic cleansing in a lot of ways. So it's just something to keep in mind as we move forward. But I want to read a quick story of Eros, and it's going to come from actually the Oracle of the Celestial Deities book. This is an oracle deck that's written by my friend Latao Wang, and him and I recently did a great podcast. Me, him, and my brother Tony. We sat down for 2 hours, really unpacked tarot, really unpacked oracles, the spiritual journey, the hero's journey, talked about the gods and goddesses. Great podcast. Highly recommend you guys check that out. And I highly recommend you check out this deck because it is really profound. And whether you check out the Oracle of Celestial Deities or his other deck, Oracle of the Mythic Heroes, it's a great way to really engage with a lot of the mythic stories, especially if you're not too familiar with Greek myth, which I myself am not. I'm not an expert on Greek myth by any means. I know some of the basic stories and concepts and archetypes, but this has been a good way for me to really engage on a deeper level and connect it to things such as astrology and connect it to the hero's journey and finding the different archetypal wisdom within myself, right? Sometimes when we just read the story by itself, we don't always forge that deeper connection. But Latau does a really great job on connecting that. And I'll show anyone who's watching the video here the card, Eros card. This is the card actually. And for anybody who is doing tarot or oracle regularly, you'll understand this concept, but I do believe there is a primary archetype, a primary card that we all resonate with. When tarot, for me, it's the Fool. I'm always on the Fool's journey. Spontaneity and impulsivity, those are my greatest strengths and weaknesses. But for me, first card I sat with this deck recently, I said, let me see who I am and what my primary path is that's unfolding. And it was the card of Eros, of course. And Eros, as it says at the very bottom of the card, desire, playfulness, and the wish to connect. And we all have that within us. I think that natural innocence that we experience and flow through in childhood in particular is an embodiment of pure Eros, right? But I'm going to read this myth to you guys because I think Latau does a really great job of unpacking it. And it's not very long. It'll only take a couple minutes. And it'll give a good foundational understanding of the story itself. And if that's what you're here for, the understanding of the story, wait no further. Here we go. But Eros, desire, playfulness, and the wish to connect. And Latau connected this with the astrological sign of Leo in particular, and a stone of pink opal. Wherefore art thou, Eros? We star-crossed lovers wish to know. We must know. For star-crossed you are, an asteroid of the main belt, wandering first to the side of wearing Mars's orbit, and then that side, just as we do on love's fair path, into and out of conflicts of the heart. Golden and rye you are, gilded and misshapen like a wedding ring, beaten in the smithies by time and cosmic trial. To the sky we look, to the heart within and the heart without. We seek evidence, proof of a reason to believe. Just to pause for a quick second. That line really gets me, man. That line really gets me. Proof for a reason to believe. We're always looking for that hope. We're always looking for that feeling to believe in love. You know, love and grief go hand in hand on the same spectrum. You can't have one without the other. And when we're heartbroken, when we're grieving, sometimes we just feel, is it worth it? Is it worth it to keep going on this, man? And when you're on the path of Eros, it feels like time and time again you get beaten down and shown the dark sides and the shadow sides of opening your heart. And I know how I have continuously. And you do question it. You really do question it. But we always look for that reason to believe. One can never be sure if you have struck our hearts. For if you have not, we shall seek you elsewhere. Yet if you have, our sense is gone and madness consumes us, which renders us hopelessly lovesick and deaf to reason. We are unable to know if it was you that pierced us. So wherefore art thou, Eros? We shall never know. You ever lost yourself in love? When you feel a love and a passion that's so strong that you're willing to sacrifice who you are to make that love work, break your own rules. I've done it. I think we've all done it. And it can be a very painful lesson to learn. And I think a great thing about love is we are meant to sacrifice ourselves in a way, but you can't ignore the shadow sides. You can't ignore when that sacrifice is not being reciprocated, right? You can't lose who you are. You have to know who you are in that space of radical aliveness, in that animating desire, as Mark Gaffney would put it. The story of Eros, the Greek god of love and passion, Cupid to the Romans, and just to make a quick note, um, I actually really don't I don't really like the fact that when we look at Eros, it is this masculine figure aesthetically. Uh, I don't really like that it was infantilized to the baby of Cupid because I think we lose a lot of the divine masculinity and healthy masculinity that is necessary for love by infantilizing the figure of love, right? Just a side note. The Greek god of love and passion is as romantic as we might expect. Eros is empty without his muse, Psyche, by his side. More specifically, Eros is the god of erotic love, passion, and poetry. Born of Mars and Venus, Eros vibrates at a higher frequency than Mars, more elevated, refined, and elegant in his interests, similar to his mother. Whereas Mars is a crass expression of masculine sexual energy, Eros seeks the erotic as a vehicle to higher levels of self-awareness. And this is really where I think Gaffney's definition comes into play here, is when you can use this sense of eroticism, not just in a sexual manner, right? Eroticism is oftentimes uh, refined into sexuality, and they do go hand in hand in a lot of ways, but you almost have to look at it as a sensual uh, experience, right? Go through life in a flirtatious manner. Flirt with the world. The world is your beloved and you are the lover. Dance intertwined. Listen to the birds sing. Hear the whispers within the wind. Dance down the sidewalk. Smile at strangers. Sing to your tune and walk by the beat of your own drum. That's really what it means to live an erotic life in the way that Gaffney puts it, and the way that I'm trying to articulate what this expression of Eros means. It's not just purely sexual desire unchecked, right? That would be a shadow manifestation of this energy, which I am going to talk about a little bit later, the shadow representations of the lover. Let's continue. Psyche was immortal, so beautiful that men worshipped her as if she were a goddess. Naturally, Aphrodite grew jealous of her, so she raged and demanded the girl's death. And as mortals, Psyche's family were powerless to object. They agreed to offer her to the divine as a sacrifice, to be left upon a rock in the ocean. Psyche was told that her true love would meet her there, and went willingly to the ocean to discover her fate. That night, by chance or destiny, Psyche was carried by Zephyrus, the west wind, and set down within the grounds of the palace of Eros, who immediately fell for her beauty, took her into hiding to wed her. Under the veil of darkness, Psyche neither saw her rescuer, nor was permitted to see him after. Yet, just by his touch, manner, and care, she loved him. You know what's wild is true love's when you can feel that complete unchecked love for somebody when there is almost something that is being held back. You know, you can fall in love. I've had this happen where you're not in a, let's say, a sexual relationship with somebody, but you fall in love with them madly and you lose yourself in it, right? Or you can fall in love with somebody through the physical vessel, the physical channel, through the sexual erotic energy. And yet there are other areas that lack depth, right? Psyche fell in love with him just by his touch, his mannerism, and the actual physical expression of Eros. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. So each night, Eros and Psyche shared a bed, And there they loved each other with passion, until such a time when Psyche became so curious that she lit an oil lamp so that she finally could gaze upon her husband. So enamored was she by what she saw that by accident she spilled oil upon Eros's arm. Startled, he awoke and took flight from the chamber, and it was this chance event that broke the spell of Aphrodite's ignorance of the marriage. Psyche held on to Eros' ankle as he flew, and so began a succession of trials, desperation, and ultimately divine intervention that made her immortal and reunited her with Eros. I'd highly recommend you guys go and read up on those trials and read up on this full story because it is a beautiful tale, and what we're willing to do for love. Traversing the celestial expanse, Eros became a luminous link between the ethereal realms and the earthly realm of love, casting spells upon us. As much as we would like to consult our astrological charts to divine true love, seek our soulmates, or fire Cupid's arrow at the ones we desire, the message contained in the romance of Eros and Psyche, for better or worse, is that far less is in our control than we would like to think. We seek connection, yet who knows how the stars align? We seek joy, yet joy is so often made from spontaneity and cannot always be orchestrated. We may lose in light what we gain in darkness. But if there is one thing we can take from their story, it is that if we want it, we must hang on to it. And if we want it, we must hang on to it. And that in itself is so hard, man. That is so difficult because when is the time to let go versus when is the time to hang on? There are times I held on too long because all I wanted to do was grasp for this love. And you know what's interesting is when we fall in love with somebody, what that person becomes is a vessel for us to recognize the capability of love that we are giving within ourselves when we are absolutely enamored by another person. That person is showing us the new depths of love that we are capable of giving within our own being. And a lot of times we become dependent upon that person to experience that love. And so we're willing to overlook toxicity, we're overlooking the red flags that may be present for the sake of fearing to lose that love. And so it's so difficult. When do we hold on versus when do we let go? And when we need to let go of a person or a relationship or a situation, if you want to put it in a more objective realm in terms of a job or career, location, whatever it might be, it's holding a part of us. And there's a part of us that is so deeply connected to that, so deeply in love with that. If we let it go, are we ever going to get that feeling back? And I think the myth of Eros is telling us that that love is always going to be there. It was within you, which is why you were experiencing it. Yes, you experienced it through that other person. Because you experienced it, it's still a possibility. And in fact, by holding on too long, you might be preventing yourself from experiencing deeper love that is possible, right? But that doesn't mean just willy-nilly let go of it. Love is worth fighting for. It is worth taking yourself to the absolute brink, in my opinion. That doesn't mean stay in something you're not supposed to stay in. When it's time to let go, you will know. You'll know within your heart that it's time. But love is always worth fighting for. It is always worth fighting for. Let me read a little bit more of that, what Latau writes about the teaching here. The teaching. Attractive, handsome, and alluring Eros is. No one can resist his magic. In a horoscope, The position of Eros sheds light on our erotic turn-ons and our irresistible desires. Depending on the house location, Eros can also provide insights about what type of personality we tend to feel drawn to romantically. The appearance of Eros in your reading, or in your podcast, which is where you are today, the appearance of Eros could be a symbol of your passion, desire, attraction, and urge to woo your love interest. Meanwhile, since Eros was considered mischievous in his matchmaking, when he shows up in a reading, it could indicate you're about to be swooped up into a hurricane of desire without even noticing what you are doing. You can surely jump straight in, but just remember that though Eros can be naughty and passionate, he only had one soulmate, his forever love, Psyche. When Eros is with her, he is a considerate, true lover, a twin flame. When he is not, and especially when his energy is not wisely harnessed, he might mismatch, shooting random arrows to create sexual fantasies untampered by maturity. Digging deeper into Eros' erotic nature, we can expand his influence from the implied sexual liberation to the more symbolic interpretation of whatever turns you on, be it work, food, or music. Eros is the passion we feel towards certain aspects of our life in which we are driven to indulge. Eros is the drive to defy our fears, no matter the cost. The drive to defy our fears. Is fear simply an absence of love, an absence of faith, an absence of connection? Because when you sit within your heart and you recognize the eternal nature of love, the eternal nature of your being, fear can't exist. When I sat with my father on his deathbed, in the final moments, there was no fear because there was only love. There was only love. And the love was so strong, so profound, despite the passing on and transition into death, that love could not die. That love itself was infinite and eternal, and it's something I still tap into within myself, and I can feel within my own body in this moment. It is this love that fuels all of our desires, all of our drive, all of our passions. It is everything we want, it is everything we need, and oftentimes we let those shadows indulge us, indulge our spirit. And I do want to read the last paragraph that's out here as which he focuses on the career aspect and sort of the more material aspect. Well, there's actually two more paragraphs. One focuses on career, one focuses on love. So I'll read them both for you guys and talk about both because I think it's very applicable. We need to bring this down to the earthly realm and look at the objective ways this impacts, not how love impacts not just relationships, but business, material, how we walk in the day to day and show up in our bodies. And it's very important to take these grand concepts and make them practical. It's something I've really been trying to do in my own tarot reading, something I've been really trying to do when I look at spiritual concepts, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we're spiritual beings, but we're human beings. We walk on this earth every day, and we need to make these things practical if we're actually going to get something out of them. In a career reading, Eros symbolizes the importance of social skills and a high level of emotional intelligence when it comes to work. You might soon be reaching a period during which you'll be involved in the business community, where you'll need to communicate, network, and use your personal charm to gain what you need. Eros is not necessarily the most powerful deity in the Olympus, but he surely knew how to use his magical arrows to spread love and affection. There will also likely be gatherings, corporate parties, and conventions that you will need to attend, and depending on your active participation, important people could walk into your life and assist you in teaching success soon. A strong resume and long hours of work alone won't get you where you want to go. Sometimes that one strike of Cupid's arrows, charms, and skill will do all the work for you. can't isolate ourselves. We can't isolate ourselves and solo grind and be the lone wolf. I'm so guilty of doing it myself. When the going gets tough, I want to thug it out on my own and I don't want help. Yes, I'll put my nose to the grindstone. Yes, I'll connect and reach out and whatnot, but I want to do it by myself, and it's not always about that. We need to offer a helping hand when the others need it. We need to accept a helping hand when others offer it. Walk through life with charm, walk through life with magnetism. Again, what we were talking about earlier, walk through life as if life itself is your beloved. That means every single being. That doesn't mean have a romantic relationship with every single being. No, of course not. But why are you not charming to everybody? Why are you not giving everybody a chance to be themselves, open up? Be magnetic, be radiant, be unapologetic in who you are, and all of the opportunities in your life will present themselves and fall into place. You need to trust in who you are. You need to remember who you are, right? That's why originally my next poetry book was going to be called Remember Who You Are until I changed it to The Last Judgment. Let's read these last two paragraphs on love specifically. And I do want to focus, again, we'll come back to love. In love reading, Eros is Eros, awaken passion and adventure within you. If you are single, this may mean that you are feeling optimistic, curious, and even a bit impatient to discover all the fun you have been missing. The difference between Cupid's and Venus's energies is that Cupid wants you to be more playful and open to experiencing raw passion in a more spontaneous manner. When Psyche and Eros shared their initial passionate nights together, they embraced each other in the darkness, despite not fully beholding each other's face. Psyche still felt Eros's warmth, tenderness, and love. Perhaps Eros in your spread is telling you that you might not be able to see all the answers yet, but you must trust your intuition and enjoy the flow of love. If he appears together with Venus, it's an even better sign that desire could eventually develop into a more mature form of love. If you are already in a stable relationship, Eros is asking you if you have been feeling bored of the same routine with your partner. Maybe it's time to rekindle that love and romance, but be careful with unnecessary distractions outside the relationship, as Eros is also famous for invoking love as a mischievous trickster. And one thing I will add, another card that I drew from the deck for this podcast was actually Uranus. I don't know if it's Uranus or Uranus. When I was in 8th grade, I always called it Uranus. My science teacher, Miss Spiegel, rest in peace, Miss Spiegel. Everybody gave her shit because she was an old lady, but she was insistent on calling it Uranus. So I don't know if it's pronounced Uranus or Uranus. Somebody please let me know in the comments below because I'm not 100% sure. But I'm going to go with Uranus because that's what Miss Spiegel taught me. Uranus, this is about chaos. You know, when the planet Uranus was first discovered, it was at the dawn of the French Revolution. Right? It was at a time of political and social unrest, and it's very fitting that we entered into a new age of enlightenment following its discovery. And I believe that is a energy that is repeating itself. There's many astrologers saying the same thing. I'm not an astrologist, so I can't tell you all the why the planets are aligning in that way. But I have heard that same comparison to the French Revolution, in that we are in a very similar astrological time right now. And so when we're looking at Uranus and Eros, this is a breaking down of your walls. It's time to break down the walls you placed around your own heart. I know you're scared. I know you've been vulnerable before and it's hurt you. It's hurt me too, a lot. I often want to shield myself from the world. I want to cover up. I want to run away. But we need to break down our walls if we want change. We need a revolution of the heart, a revolution that is fueled in love, a new way of being. And unfortunately, what that means is the ways we've come to know, we need to let go of them. We need to hold on to the feeling of love and beauty and the aesthetic wonders that make up this reality and shape our reality. But we need to embrace new. We must go first into the darkness, because it's in the darkness that we'll be greeted by the light. And, that actually makes me feel called to read a poem that I recently wrote, Remnants of a Shattered Dawn. Pull it up here. And it's really about a world that has just faced a judgment day. And I feel we are in judgment right now. I told you before in the beginning of this podcast, this has been a karmic cleansing for me this year. I've had to sit with myself in ways that I have not wanted to sit with myself. I have uncovered some of the deepest shit that I didn't realize I hadn't processed. And it hurts. It hurts to know what has happened to me, what that has led to, how it has fueled my path and um, fueled a lot of my own desires and ways that I've held myself back because I'm been traumatized in so many different ways, right? But it's been a time of healing and of time for me to give myself grace, time for me to try and open my own heart despite the pain that is present. Because I don't think people really understand me because I don't open myself up in that way to most people. I can't, not for what I've been through, not for the way I've been taken advantage of, not of the ways my innocence has been destroyed. And you probably feel the same way. And that's okay. But we need to learn to have faith in the breaking down of these walls and to put ourselves out there and to be open, honest, and vulnerable. That's the only way through. It's the only way through. So let me read you this poem called Remnants of a Shattered Dawn. And it's about a world that has just faced judgment and is trying to hold on to that feeling of love and innocence. Remnants of a Shattered Dawn. The ghosts of joy haunt now barren plains. I yearn for the world we had before our judgment day. Memories live amongst remnants of a shattered dawn. Hope remains despite the pain of wanting to move on. Fields of gold once captured the morning light. It was a time of peace where darkness was out of sight. Love brought us together, hand in hand, intertwined. A tapestry of the heart held together by the divine. But in the darkest night, fate's whispers filled the air. Our world burned as children cried out in despair. A flash of Armageddon brought heaven into hell. Lightning split the sky, leaving our home an empty shell. A broken swing sways gently over a cloud of dust. When innocence died, it took with it our sense of trust. Dreams return me to the days of the life we once lived, left to die in ruin. It is God we must learn to forgive. Yet, I still remember that golden warmth of the sun, the connections we had forged, the battles we had won. In the heart's darkest corner, all of our love still remains. A lone flicker of light that's been buried by the pain. I look down in the ashes for a soul spark that survived. Together, let's tell a story that as a phoenix, we can rise. While the world has fallen, will we let our spirits fly? Only when we give up will our courage truly die. Pick up the heart's broken pieces, hold them tight. It's in the darkest hour that we'll be greeted by the light. On top of our ruins, new seeds begin to take root, reborn into love as the end can start us anew. It's remnants of a shattered dawn. And I've seen a couple videos this past week, actually, must be no coincidence, about that word Armageddon and how it represents a breaking down of structure, but a beginning of a new era. It's not that we're all facing final judgment, descending immediately into heaven or hell, but this is a time where we get to define what this new world is going to look like. Both the darkness and the light are working for their own agendas, and there's no standing in the middle ground anymore. We must firmly act in what it is that we believe in, who it is that we know we are. We must open ourselves to love, even if it feels like the dawn of our reality has summoned into the pits of hell. World's on fire, you might get a little burned. But when you step into those flames, like the phoenix, you will rise. They may leave behind scars. Those scars will tell a story of who you once were. The boy must die before the man can be born. You must feel broken before you can become whole, and recognize that you've always been whole, and that our brokenness was just a story we told ourselves based on our pains, based on our trauma, based on the ways we've been victimized by this world. And we're not meant to live victimized. We're meant to be empowered, meant to be fueled by the beauty and the passion and the innocence that lives within all of us. We're all here for a reason right now. And it's to usher in this new paradigm of being. It's a return to the roots of who we are. That's why these stories, these mythic heroes are so important right now. That's why the story of Eros is so important right now. When we can go and we can take a step back and remember who the fuck we are, recognize these archetypes within us. This new world based on love is an inevitability. But you got to show up for yourself. You got to show up for it. You got to believe in it, despite what you're seeing in the world. The darkness wants you to be afraid. It wants you to consume. It wants you to think that this agenda to enslave man and destroy the spiritual aspect of our lives so that we can become conformists and live within the realm of a totalitarian mind prison. You got to recognize that it's a trap of mind and it only exists with your own acquiescence. It's not possible when you step into the light to become enslaved. You have the keys to your own cage, and you've placed that cage around your own heart. And maybe we're afraid to start to live in this world, to take chances, to take risks, to dive into the unknown. But who will we be if we don't? Ask yourself this. Who will you be? How will you be remembered? Will you be remembered? Not in the ways you want to be. If you're telling yourself, I could have done this, I could have done that, well, guess what? What are your children going to say? He could have done this, he could have done that. He was flawed, but he did his best. It's no way to live. Don't carry no shame. Not to the grave. This life is fucking temporary. You better give it your all. You better unlock the love that lives within you because that is the gift you are here to give. That is the gift we're all here to give right now. That's why the story of Eros is coming to you in the form of this podcast right now to serve as a goddamn reminder of that. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. There's no more time to waste. What are you really afraid of? And I'm asking this of myself right now, too. Don't think that this is just your judgment day. It's mine, too. It's mine, too. You know? And I think we need to get back to looking at the roots of our desire, or the roots of what it is that we want in this life, and know what's worth holding on to and know what we need to let go of. We know what's worth holding on to. Tighten your fucking grip on that rope and don't you let go of the love that lives within you. There is no time for that. Let go of the fear, let go of the doubt, let go of the self-sabotaging behaviors because it is time. If not now, it's going to be never. It's as simple as that. This is the wake-up call you need, so be it. It's time, baby. It's time. It's time. We don't got no more time to waste because the world is in your fucking hands. It's in your hands. It's in my hands. You don't do your part, this world burns. If I don't do my part, this world burns. It's all our creation. And you need to be fueled by that divine sense of Eros, that beauty, that sensuality, that love, that spirit that animates all of life. And you know what it is, even if it's been undefined by words this whole time, and you haven't been able to put your finger on how to explain it. It's right there. I know you feel it within you. I feel it within my own heart too. Let it loose. Let it out. And let it express itself in the way that you need to. It's time. It's time. Because what's the shadow side of that? What's the shadow side of it? We all see it, right? It's mindless consumption. It's addiction. That's what addiction is. It's mindless consumption. It's numbing yourself. It's running away. Let me gouge myself in pleasure gluttonously for a quick fix gratification, temporary pleasure. And when I come back down, oh, I'm going to feel so much shame and bury myself and say, oh, I'm going to do better the next time. But the second you're back in that uncomfortability, what are you going to run to again? What have you ran to time and time again? What the fuck are you running from? What are you running from? Step into the flames directly right now. Tell people what you need to tell them. Whatever it may be, whoever it may be, stop holding on or stop holding back. You need to be the fullest, authentic version of you. And you know, the other shadow of Eros is in the form of self-pity and self-loathing. And it's the depression, it's the anxiety, it's the shame, it's the unworthiness. And those two go hand in hand. The addiction and the shame, they feed one another. Like a beast, they feed one another, right? You feel shame because you have these addictions and consumptions and you can't control them. And so because to mask the shame, you go back into them. And when you're out of that consumption, you feel it even deeper and deeper. You don't need to feel ashamed of who you are. You don't need to feel ashamed of who you are. I'll say it one more time. You don't need to feel ashamed about who you are. You're a beautiful an expression of the divine and love and light. And you know this to be true because you can feel this within you. You've been sitting here listening to this podcast. You can feel it within you. What have we been tapping into this whole time? Right? It's time to bring that into the practical realm every single day. Every single choice matters right now. And that might sound like a great responsibility because it is. Every single choice has brought you to where you are right now. It is all your own creation. This world is our creation based on what we acquiesce to, based on what we hold on to, based on what we choose every single day. Is that what you would like to continue? Ultimately, you need to decide what it is that you want the most. You need to decide what it is that really matters. And I think for all of us, that's going to be the same thing. It is love. What is love? How is that expressed? It's through family, it's through connection, it's through feeling purpose in providing for those people and being there for those people and showing up. It's through offering your new unique expression and your gifts. And maybe that just means being open in what you have to say, offering guidance, offering insight, being a leader through your actions. Maybe it's through poetry. Maybe it's through song. Maybe it's through dance. Maybe it's through sport. Only you know the answer to that. Let go of the shame you're holding on to. Let go of the story that you are somehow broken, unworthy based on the way past people have treated you. I've been heartbroken many times. I experienced devastating heartbreak. Devastating just this year. Devastating. Destroyed me. I really liked the idea of a woman ruining my life until it actually happened. It sounded like a nice fantasy. But at the same time, I knew what I was doing and I knew it was going to lead to that. But I was so lost within it, within that feeling of unchecked love without reciprocation, that I didn't care. And I can accept that. It taught me a lot. Sometimes I still wish it was there. Love is always going to be there. Still get those reminders, certain things that make you think of someone. It's always going to be there. I don't even know if I want them to go away. Because the scars tell us stories. We're willing to tear our hearts open just to fucking feel something in this world. That's commendable. And if you've done that and it's led you to hurt and pain, I apologize. But that was a worthy cause. And you did your best and you thought what you were doing what was right for love. And you need to be willing to put yourself back out there and be vulnerable again. And now you know how to do it smarter. You're going to need to learn to trust yourself again. Recognize green flags, recognize red flags. What it is that you offer, what it is that you need from others. Communicate, set boundaries. You know what you need for you. Be unapologetic in that. There's no shame in expressing your own needs. And if somebody is not able to meet you in your expressed needs and help you meet them, that's okay, but maybe that's not what's meant to be. I'm going to read another poem for you to give you a little taste of my own experience here. And I think maybe this will help anybody who's dealing with the consequences of heartbreak. And I think maybe I just need to express this poem myself for my own good. And all these poems are going to be in my new poetry collection that's coming out, The Final Judgment. But this one is called To My Once Beloved. I don't know if I'd ever share this one beyond just the book, but let's share it since we're on the topic of expressing ourselves, shall we? To my once beloved. Do you remember the way it used to be? Together we ventured, hoping the world would set us free. I long for a return to the days with feelings of old, for when love entered the picture, I couldn't leave the truth untold. I'll likely never know the reality of what you felt, but what we have in common is we spent life running from ourselves. I'm used to being alone, but the pain grew each time you pushed away. Just for once in my life, I wished love was something that would stay. I finally gathered the courage that I needed to let you go. But in that moment, you drew me closest, shattering all I had ever known. Maybe there were happy endings, and dreams really can come true. And then you changed your mind, just when I thought we'd see it through. I've done my best to forget you, but the pain won't seem to leave me. The wounds will one day be scars, so I do as you said, just let 'em be. What was home turned on me, creating remnants of a broken man. I left, knowing hurt would follow, but new beginnings was my only plan. It's the little things that make me think of you. I'm not sure I want them gone, but I understand it wasn't destined, so I'm doing my best to move on. Maybe in another lifetime, we can find a way to do it right. For when I see the moon shine, you're the one I remember in its light. I felt good to say that poem. However long it takes you to move on from somebody, something, maybe you don't ever fully move on. There's a part of you, when you give your heart to somebody, there's a part of your heart that you never really get back. And every single person, the way they fit in your own heart, it's like a unique puzzle piece, right? And when they exit, it's like that piece can never really go back in the same way. And that's why we have scars. That's why we have memories. That's why we have triggers, you know? And that's okay. That's okay. It almost doesn't matter how long it's been. I still think about my dad all the time. That's been almost 10 years. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is how you choose to show up. Because regardless of how long it's been, the memories of the previous times will resurface. You will have to confront your new triggers, the pains that other people have left you with, because ultimately we can do all the self-healing that we want, but it's true healing that comes in when we recognize our responses to others. When we jump into new relationships, how this person triggers us in ways that another person might have, or how when somebody says something and how we choose to respond. Do we respond in the same way? We saw where that led us before. Let me try something new. Let me choose to be a little more vulnerable. Let me choose not to get upset about this. Well, I learned from this in the past, right? True healing comes when you choose to be vulnerable again. You'll never heal if you never open your heart back up. And living in pain is no way to live. It's not. Living in senseless pleasure and hedonism and addiction is no way to live. It isn't. It's simply not worth it. And it sounds very simple. Just just open back up. But at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Put yourself out there. Take risks. Be willing to love again. And that doesn't have to be in a romantic sense. It just means with yourself. Look in the goddamn mirror. See that beautiful fucking soul right in front of you. Here we are again. Here we are again, taking another body in another lifetime, going through these lessons, trying to figure this shit out, and none of us are going to be perfect, all right? Man, oh man, how many times have we done this before? And how many times will we do it again? I mean, that question is an infinite unknown. Just got to trust yourself. Don't let yourself be fueled by the pain. in the loss anymore. You really don't have to. Find what it is in your life that makes you feel alive, that brings out that innocence, that playfulness, that spirit within you, and hold on to that. Hold on to it. And if you feel it's falling away from you, fight for it. And if at some point it's time to let go, you will know. At some point you'll say, I've done all the fighting I can, and I can be proud of myself, but I can let go now. It's through a radical revolution of the love that we have within our hearts that we will fully fulfill Eros' prophecy to allow love to be the animating force and spirit that moves us forward. That's where the purpose is. That's where the meaning is. That is where you will find true liberation and freedom, a freedom that can't be taken away from you. As George Orwell said, they fear love because it creates a world they can't control. It's going to wrap up this episode. If you're feeling the show, be sure to subscribe. Leave us a thumbs up on YouTube, a comment, a review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Be sure to purchase my book, To Marshal Love Against Tyranny, and be on the lookout for my next poetry book. You can subscribe on Substack, mcdermott.substack.com. And be sure to book a tarot reading with me. I would really love to do some one-on-one tarot readings with you guys right now. I feel really called to step into that space. So I've been doing them every day for myself and for others around me, and it's really helped me. It gives me some guidance, and I think sometimes it's all we need. Just a bit of guidance. A special thank you to Tranquil Desires, our official sponsor here in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Truly, truly a magical store run by a magical woman, Patty Johnson. Thank you very much, Patty. And thank you to all the listeners for tuning in and making it this far. And I will see you all on the next episode. So long.